Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I'm a 2000 rated over-the-board chess player, and in this series we're trying to climb to 2300 rapid elo on chess.com while explaining my thought process as best as I can for your education and entertainment. We have another Alapin. We've had the Alapin in the, previous two episodes as well, so make sure you check those out if you're interested. And the main moves against the Alapin are d5 and knight to f6, because if black does nothing, like let's say d6, we immediately push d4, and if this capture occurs, normally there's a knight on f3 which takes, but here we can take with the pawn and have a two-pawn center and be very happy. So d5 immediately challenges our center, and so we should take on d5, queen d5, and then we will push d4. So that's the point of pawn c3, to push d4, of course. But with the queen on d5, this is not a Scandinavian defense. If these pawns were back on c2 and c7 respectively, then this would be a Scandinavian. We could play something like knight to c3 with tempo on the queen, etc., etc. However, there is pawns on c3 and c5. So you could argue that this is basically an improved version of the Scandinavian for the black pieces, because his queen is actually pretty safe in the center of the board. However, the downside of having this pawn on c5 is that there could be problems on the queen side with some knight maneuver into b5, for example. So black needs to be slightly careful. But okay, let's go knight to f3, developing the knight, applying some defense to the d4 pawn. That's pretty standard play. We can also, in some certain scenarios, look to play something like c4 and shove this pawn into the d5 square, which can be really nice. Now, there are some very interesting lines after the move bishop to g4, which looks incredibly powerful, pinning the knight to the queen. However, on bishop g4, if I remember correctly, yeah, I'm pretty sure we can take on c5, and the lines are very interesting after that. But my opponent goes knight to c6, applying more pressure to the pawn on d4. And, I mean, if I'm not careful, I could have some problems defending it. Now, okay, we always in the Alapin want to consider, can we play knight a3 for knight b5 and knight c7, or knight c4, or bishop c4, right? That's a very common way to play. So if we were to go knight to a3 and my opponent were to take on d4, for example, we could play knight to b5, threatening knight c7 check. And if something like queen back to d8, we could take on d4 with the knight, which means we wouldn't have to take with the pawn, and we wouldn't get an isolated queen's pawn, which should be rather good from a positional standpoint. We would end up with this 3 versus 2 pawn structure on the queen side, which should favour us in all endgames. However, after knight to a3, black doesn't have to take. And even after knight to b5, he doesn't have to go queen back to d8. He could give a check, for example. But I think after check and bishop to e2, I think we're completely fine there. If something like knight to d5 trying to defend c4 looks pretty strong in that position. So I think knight to a3 is a pretty safe bet. It is a very common idea after cd4 to go knight b5, so that not only are we threatening c7, but we're also adding some defense to the d4 pawn. Now, the question that many of you are probably wondering is, Alex, can't black just play pawn a6, stopping knight to b5? Because, you know, then we don't have the idea of taking back, we don't have knight to c7 or anything like that. And you would be correct. However, after a6, there are some other considerations. Firstly, we could go bishop c4. The knight supports the c4 square, we can hit the queen, and if we can push d5 and kick this knight, we should be doing rather well. However, after a6 and bishop to c4, the black queen doesn't have to retreat and allow us to play d5. She could give a check on e4, for example, and after bishop to e3, the black pawn could take, and then we don't get to play d5. That's not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but it's worth considering. We could also play knight back to c2, defending the d4 pawn from the c2 square, and this, although it looks really strange, is actually a really normal way to develop in the Alapin. I have seen Daniel Naroditsky do that many, many times in his old speedrun episodes. We also can consider a move like bishop to e3, just defending the d4 pawn, which is perfectly viable. We could also consider taking, going for this kind of position, which is also interesting. And if takes and queen takes, we can go bishop to e3. We can also consider knight c4, looking for knight b6 with a forking quite a few pieces, although the queen can always give a check on e4 or e6 to get out of danger. So I think when I'm looking at this position, I am heavily considering bishop e3 and taking on c5. Taking on c5 looks interesting to me. It does. However, yeah, here, and here does look quite nice. But I could just start with this. And after takes and takes, bishop c4 isn't going anywhere. So I think bishop e3 is interesting. I do have to watch for knight g4. But then I can go bishop c4 and the queen can't move with check because my bishop is blocking the e-file. And if takes and takes and takes, rook takes, I think that looks rather nice. I think I like that. Yeah, that material count is fine. So I think bishop e3 looks interesting. So we're going to play it. I'm not in theory anymore, I will say. So I'm not 100% sure these are the best moves, but since black hasn't put his pawn on e6 yet, I don't have to worry about my knight for the time being. We could also consider going for the immediate bishop c4. That's also worth saying, because the queen, again, cannot move with check, because the bishop blocks the scope on the king. So if bishop c4... let's say queen f5, maybe? Knight takes, queen takes. We have a really good lead in development there. That looks rather interesting. Yeah, is there any downside to going bishop c4? The queen can't attack b2. She can't attack g2 because we cover g5 twice. So I think bishop c4 makes a lot of sense. Let's play it. Let's try to develop with tempo. And I mean, it should be rather easy to take back on the d4 square. If queen to e4 is played, trying to keep a pin on my bishop, I mean, worst case scenario, I suppose, would be trading queens. I don't think I mind trading queens, though. I don't think I mind. Okay. Queen h5 looks rather normal. If we take on d4, he has the option to trade queens with me, but we have such an easy position there. Such an easy position. Let's just take. If queen takes and rook takes, again, we have this 3 versus 2 pawn structure on the queen side, which the reason I mention this quite a few times, and by the way, if you see my coaching call that I uploaded to the channel the other day, I talk a lot about this with Adam, the guy I was coaching. And basically, because the kings are going to castle kingside, most likely, it's going to be very easy for me to create a passed pawn on the queen side, because they have a pawn majority on the queen side. And so endgames ought to favor me, because it's going to be rather difficult for black to create a passed pawn on the king side, because he does have a 4 versus 3. However, the only real way to do that would be to bring the pawns to f4 and e3, which 1 takes quite a long time, and 2, my king is probably going to be on e1 or g1 anyway, and it's far easier for me to create a passed pawn on the c file, for example, than my opponent to do it on the e file. So okay, my opponent takes on d4. We could take the queen, because there's no knight c2 because I take. There's no knight f3 because I take with the queen. So queen takes, knight takes, bishop here. That's true. I could also take with the bishop and maintain the offer of the queen trade. I could take with the queen, getting rid of the possibility of a queen trade. Which, now I think about it, I feel like makes a lot of sense. Because now, why do I want a queen trade when I can just attack? Like rook d1, I'm ready to castle, I'm going to have every single piece out. This knight could come into c4 at some point. It's interesting. Could take with the bishop. I could take the queen, or I could take on d4 with the queen. Those are my 3 options. Those are my three options. If takes, e6, let's say bishop f5. Take, bishop f5. I guess bishop d5 is quite strong. Hitting this, and if I move like rook b8, I could always go for a move like bishop to e5, and the rook can't keep an eye on b7. I can also bring the knight in via c4. I can also castle queenside and use the d file. So if e6 instead of developing to f5, so let's say take, and e6, well, this pawn is under attack anyway. So maybe f6 preparing e5, but then I maybe have this, although I guess you can take for the time being. Although if I just castle queenside and bring a rook to e1, that looks interesting too. So I feel like going for a queen trade is actually the best option. Let's do it. Let's do it. And also I'm forcing this knight out to the h5 square, and as we know, typically a knight on the rim is dim. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, please drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. And if you are on mobile, then you can swipe right on the comment tab and you can hype the video, which is a new feature by YouTube, and I'd really appreciate it if you can do that. So, okay, we have e6, kind of as expected. Queenside castle looks interesting, although we do have to consider the fact that our knight is currently under attack, and I'm not really sure I want this trade. So I could put my knight on c2. I could also play bishop e2, counter-attacking this knight and preparing knight to c4, which looks rather nice. If bishop e2, bishop a3, bishop h5, bishop b2, rook b1, bishop a3... bishop f3, attacking b7. How do you defend that? If rook b8, then bishop e5, rook back, bishop takes. You can't pin me because I have bishop c6 with check. So, okay, one option is knight c2. The other option is bishop to e2. If bishop e2 and knight to f4, though, then if I go knight c4... he can always take on g2 with check, and I'm not sure I like that. So, knight c2 probably makes the most sense. Although I'm not sure where my knight goes after that. Although maybe it's just a safe option. Maybe it's a safe option. I mean, black still has development problems, because they have ideas of like g4, this kind of thing, g5, the knight comes back to f6. Yeah, I'm not really sure I want to give my knight up to ruin my structure. Because after b5, the b pawn is not a weakness, although maybe a4 makes sense. Bishop e2 is interesting, but I think knight f4, because if bishop f3, there's always this check as well, picking up b2. So I think knight back to c2 makes most sense. And, okay, I think we have three distinct advantages here. Now, I don't know if they're enough to actually win, but I would say we have three advantages. The first advantage is this 3 versus 2 on the queen side. Endgames should favour me. Second advantage is I am more developed than my opponent. I have all my minor pieces out, I'm ready to castle and get my rook on the open file. That's not going to be too difficult. My third advantage is the fact that the light squared bishop for black is going to struggle to get into the game. And if he tries pawn b5, which looks like it gets the bishop to b7, I actually have the option of bishop to e2 with tempo on the knight. And after the knight moves to, say, f4, I can go bishop to f3 with tempo on the rook. And then there's no time for bishop to b7. And I could even give a check on c6 if I really want to. So, with all that being said, I think we are doing very well in this position. So, okay, we have bishop d6. Castle queenside looks almost instant. He might want to give a check here. I can always move. I think castle queenside makes sense. g3 also makes sense, just taking up the f4 square. But if the knight comes into f4, I can always kick it out anyway, and it's not going anywhere. If it goes to h3, I don't think I care. It's out of the game. Could get trapped after f4, cutting off the h5 square. That's fine. I think we should castle queenside. Also, there could be tactics on this bishop, of course, with like bishop g7 stuff, although it doesn't work just yet because my opponent can always give a check on f4 to get out of danger. So g3 probably wants to be played at some point soon. I can also consider this maneuver if I would like to do it. Okay, the immediate bishop f4, I'm a bit unsure about. What does that do? e5 doesn't seem to work. For a start, I can go bishop c5 and cut the black king off from castling, and then this bishop is going to be vulnerable. And the e-pawn is going to be vulnerable as well. Okay, so we have castles kingside, makes sense. I think g3 is screaming to be played. I don't see a reason not to play it. I probably want to go for this maneuver as well, but maybe I want f4 first to shut down the e5 push. Opposite side castling is interesting here because queens are off the board, so it shouldn't mean that we have like guns blazing attacks, but it does add another dimension to the position. Okay. We have bishop back to c7. Bishop c5 is interesting, hitting the rook. If rook d8 takes, and rook d1 looks nice, winning control of the d-file. I do quite like that. I also gain access to d4 with the knight if I want it, although I'm not sure where I want to put the knight, to be fair. Not entirely sure. But if bishop c5, my opponent could just go rook e8, and then I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I think this maneuver makes a lot of sense. If bishop e2, knight f6, bishop f3, the knight could go into d5. Okay, I could start with pawn f4. I could also consider rook h to e1, just controlling the e5 square, although f4 also achieves that. If f4, b5, I can again go for this maneuver, because it comes with tempo on the knight. So I think f4. If bishop d7, I can always take, and then take. And if he tries bishop c6 first, I don't think it actually does anything. Okay, knight to f6, prepares b5, and bishop b7, I think. So, okay, we can also consider taking. We shouldn't neglect the possibility. I'm just not sure what we gain. I mean, my opponent has the bishop pair, and my knight isn't all that impressive. Maybe I can try and bring the knight to g4, although king g7 defends, and I don't really have anything. So, okay. I could offer a bishop trade. Take, although the knight is quite good. Knight g4, don't really achieve anything. So I think I probably want to just make this maneuver happen ASAP. Yeah, let's do it. Let's get the bishop to f3. The bishop is no longer useful on c4. It's staring into nothing. So I'll take away the g4 square, and I'll try to apply pressure to this diagonal. I, again, need to consider what I'm going to do with my knight, but I think first it's important for me to try and stifle black's play. So, okay, yeah, I like this. We have a good bind on the e5 square, which I think is very useful. We're going to get our bishop to a very active diagonal. We can look to double up our rooks on the d-file. That's pretty likely. Bishop d7 still can't be played because I take, and then the bishop is hanging on d7. So that's very useful. My bishop on d4, although it isn't posing any kind of threat immediately, is just very well placed. Very well placed. Yeah, I mean, my opponent might be trying for knight to d5, although I can always kick it out with c4 if I want. And then, like, b3, and I actually have a pretty cool pawn structure there, trying to bind the central squares with some nice pawn chains. And then I suppose I get closer with my queenside pawns to creating a passer, which is also nice. I like this. We are a bit low on time, which isn't ideal, but this is... I kind of enjoy this type of chess, this kind of positional jostling. I do quite enjoy it. I suppose I suppose I have two questions in this position. I know I want my bishop on f3. I think I want this pawn on c4 if I can. Those things seem relatively obvious to me. I think my question is, one, where do I want this knight? That I don't know. I mean, maybe on e5, but what, am I going to go e3, c4, e5? Maybe that's the plan. It's not ridiculous. And secondly, where do I want this rook? Do I want the rook on e1, or would I like to double up on the d file? Because the d file is the only open file, but I also want to try and make sure that my opponent can't play pawn e5 at any point. So those are two questions that I'm asking myself here, which hopefully gives you a bit of an insight into how I think about my chess games. I think that that is the key pawn break for black. If he could play e5, the game completely changes. So I don't really want to allow that. And yeah, I also need to watch for this knight coming in. Or, I mean, even to e4. But there's no fork because my bishop covers. So if knight e4, I just go bishop to f3, attacking the knight. And if f5 defending, then I mean rook e1, and this knight is not good. e6 is horrific. And I'm completely winning in that position because of how weak the black pawn structure is. So I'm not really fussed about that. Okay, knight d5 immediately. That surprises me, I have to say. What does he do against c4? Knight b6. Well, then he can't go b5, so I just go b3, and I chill. He could try a5, a4, I guess. I don't know if that's good, though. I mean, c4 just looks like a no-brainer. You know what he might be trying? He might be trying on c4 to go knight to e7, to either come to f5 or c6. I've got to say, though, I don't think that's particularly impressive. Let's just go c4. It is sometimes a bit of a trap to try to stop any kind of counterplay for your opponent and just completely focus on your opponent. Okay, we should also consider bishop c5. The only defensive move looks to be rook to e8. We do not have a back rank because of takes, and here the bishop covers, unfortunately. So here. Do we achieve anything by doing that? I don't think so, because then e5 becomes more likely. So I actually think we should just leave that for the time being. Worth considering, but rook e8 and we just don't have anything. Yeah, so I think bishop to f3. My bishop clearly wants to be on this diagonal, so let's just put him there. Let's put him there. No b5 ideas, no b6 ideas. If the rook goes to b8, I can always throw this in if I want to. And okay, the bishops are well placed. I'm ready to play b3 if c4 comes under threat. But to be honest, it's not coming under threat anytime soon. I mean, the c-file is clogged up. And this bishop can't come to e6 or a6 to attack it. This knight can't attack c4 anytime soon. Unless it really wants to make a journey to a5 and just be useless after I play b3. So, yeah, this is great. This is great. Now, do I know how I'm going to win this position? No, I don't really know yet. But I do know we just have a very easy position to play. Okay, knight c6 on the board. If bishop c3 and pawn to e5, I can snap the knight and then snap the pawn off. So that's no problem. Let's drop back. There's no bishop to d7. I take. If rook d8, I think I just take and then put my other rook on d1. Looks fine to me. e5 is something that I'm playing against, but like I said, it can't be played just yet because I take the knight and then I take the pawn. So that's not a problem. Even if e5 could be executed, this trade, no, it probably does help black, actually, because then he can play on the e-file. The big problem is his bishop. His light-squared bishop is a big, big problem. Okay, rook d8 played, sort of as expected. I mean, we should take this. We should take and bring our other rook to d1. Typically, trading a pair of rooks is good for the side pushing for a win. Here, the threat is take, take, and take. Because with 2 rooks, you can create quite a lot of counterplay. Here we have a rather interesting position, because the black king is exposed on the back rank. If bishop c7, for example, I mean, you know, we're already prepared to get rid of this knight, which is controlling d8, so... Okay, bishop to e7 is a safer bet. Interesting position. Okay. I mean, black is really struggling for moves here. Really struggling for moves. But how do we crash through? Can we crash through? For example, do we go knight d4, offering a knight trade? I'm not sure. If knight to d4 and bishop to d7, knight c6, bishop c6, bishop c6, bc6, rook d7, king f8, rook c7, pawn c5. I'm not even sure that is all that good. Oh, wait, no, we do have bishop g7, king g7, and rook takes, bishop. Oh, okay, that works. Although the bishop could just go to f6, for example. Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Okay. Knight d4, bishop d7. What else can we do? We could go for a fancy move like knight to f5, and if takes, bishop is threatened, because we're threatening to take the knight and then the bishop. If king f8, we have the same idea of bishop g7, distracting the king. If rook e8 defending, then b7 will hang. If bishop back to f8, for example, b7 will hang. Yeah, that looks quite good, actually. If knight d4, bishop d4, bishop d7... I don't want bishop g7, king g7, rook d7, because then we have opposite colour bishops. Although, with rook still on the board, we have decent chances to win that. Okay, knight d4, bishop d4. He doesn't have to go bishop d7. He could play something else. Could. Not sure what. I mean, I guess knight d4 as well removes the defense of the b7 pawn. Like, the knight is blocking my bishop currently. Yeah, so bishop d7, I think knight f5 is strong. Because b7 is so weak. My bishop is also dominating this knight's forward movement, which is worth noting. So this knight is not really an issue from an aggressive point of view. Knight d4. It feels like I have to go for this, because otherwise black might consolidate. But also, I mean, how is he going to consolidate? Like, what can he do? Is there any way to distract the dark-squared bishop from defending back rank mate? That's another question. Because I could go bishop c6, pawn c6, and bishop b4. And if... Oh, no, there's no back rank mate because bishop back. Okay, that's no good. So, okay, let's go knight d4. I'm down to a minute. I need to make a move. I've spent long enough in that position, and I think this is good enough for an attempt to win, at least. Again, I still hold quite a few cards in my favour. Black king is vulnerable. I have a very strong light-squared bishop on this diagonal, and I control the only open file. This bishop still can't really develop. Okay. Ooh, okay. That is somewhat surprising. If here... that doesn't really make sense, does it? I think we should take with the bishop. Now, he doesn't have to go bishop d7, of course. No, he goes pawn f6, okay. Can he get away with that, though? Bishop b6 looks very nice. I don't have a way in yet, though. What's this? I'm not sure I can stop him. Although b7 is perennially weak. I'll bring my king up. I'm trying to formulate a plan. I don't want to go rook e1. Because then bishop d7. And then if take, then this is annoying. So I need to stop bishop d7, and e5 is on the way. Maybe I should have left my bishop here. I don't know. But then no, then bishop d7. Maybe I could have dropped back. Maybe that was easier. I don't know. Maybe I just start pushing on the queen side. Maybe a4, a5. Okay, he's preparing this. Sure, sure. Let's go c5, looking for c6. Bishop d7. Looks like the only move. b4, a5. I can take, or take like this. Or maybe not with the bishop, because then bishop c5. Yeah, he's got to go bishop d7. He's got to go bishop d7. Oh, I've got to be careful, actually. b4 runs into this. So if bishop here, I maybe go king c3. Can I sack? Wait a minute. I think that might be a blunder. Because now I get to play this. And you can't take it because you'll lose the rook. I think this is game over. If rook a7, bishop back to b6, rook has to move, and then I take, yeah, that's game over. I think my opponent had better ways to try and defend that. I'm not sure, though, but I think bishop d7 was the only try. Because you can't let me go to c6 because of the alignment of the king and the rook. That's the issue. There is b5, though. I have to say, I didn't consider b5. That's a great find. Okay, game on, game on. Bishop here, rook here, rook... Sorry, king there. No, I don't really want to trade the bishops. Let's come back. Prepare this. Maybe. I don't want to play it preemptively. a3, b4 stuff looks reasonable to keep his bishop out. Rook a7. Then I come to b6 and I win because the rook is forced back. I push and the rook is trapped. I'm trying to trap the rook. Wait, can he avoid his rook getting trapped? I don't think he can because his bishop can't move. e5, c7. Rook b7, bishop b6, rook b7, take, promote, I win. Oh, b5 might not actually work because of his rook. Yeah, I think his rook is just trapped. I mean, not right this immediate second, but yeah, it can't come to c8 because his bishop's in the way. Yeah, that should be fine. Really interesting game. Wow, this is really interesting. Very positional game. I still don't know whether trading the queens was the right idea earlier on, but forcing his knight out made a lot of sense to me. Oh, wait, if here he can give this with check. Hold on. King moves. Ah, no, but if rook c8, I still have this, so it doesn't actually work. Let's come back. e4. Oh, wow. Oh, wow, okay. That's a great find again. Okay, let's drop back. I want to go g4 and try and win this pawn. Also, rook e1 exists if I want it. Just chasing the pawn. My opponent is defending so well here. Really, really resourceful. And I'm super low on time. If bishop g4... Rook d4, pawn f5, pawn h3... No. Bishop g4, maybe rook d5. And if pawn f5, pawn h3, bishop back, rook takes. I think that makes sense. If bishop back to g6... g4, preparing f5, forcing f5 from my opponent. Take, rook d5 with tempo, preparing rook e5, bishop b4. Also viable. Let's go g4. Take. The great thing about this position for me is that my bishop and my pawn restrict his rook so much. It's very important. Yeah, let's go rook e5. Pinning the bishop, preparing to win the bishop. Yeah. And takes, I think, is our only move. Yeah, I think so. I could give a check, but I don't really accomplish anything. So let's just grab the pawn. I don't know. Black might be able to draw this, but it's going to be difficult. Weak pawn on a6, weak pawn on h7. My king probably wants to come to somewhere like this. Okay, that makes sense. King c6. Because I'm threatening this. Oh, I think he just missed it. Yeah, I think... Wait. No, he takes a check. Oh, no. No, I missed it. Oh, no. Now I'm probably drawing. If not, I'm worse because of this pawn. Oh, no. Okay. Do I just trade down? Ah, I've completely scuppered this. Yeah, I think I just trade down. That's really bad. That's really bad. That's really, really bad from me. My opponent defended incredibly well, so I have to give him a lot of credit there. Found some really nice moves. I mean, here I guess king to d2 made much more sense. And the game goes on. And after something like king c6... I mean, can I even defend this pawn anyway? I don't think so. Yeah, no, I think the pawn is lost anyway, to be fair. I don't know if there was any better option for me. The whole g4 thing seemed like the best way forwards. So, I don't know. I don't know. My opponent has played really well. I want my pawns to clamp down on g5. Obviously, I want him to take me so I can bring my king in. Ooh, that's a big weakness. He's got to be careful he doesn't lose this. He's got to be a little bit careful. I could get the opposition if he's... Yeah, and this is so weak. I think h5 is a very committal move. Obviously, his rook is pinned to his king, so if he moves his king, then I'll take his rook. Because I want rooks off the board. Okay, there we go. King d6. Pawn b3, pawn b4. Pawn b4. King c4, king e6. King b5. King f5. King a5. King f4. King b4. Pawn b5. Take, push, push. Can I win that race? No, he's a step ahead. He's a step ahead. I guess he just shuffles. Wait, am I actually worse now? Oh, wait, hold on. Hold on. Have I messed up? Wait. I think I have to step back to try and get the opposition. If I get the opposition, I have chances. So like here, I have chances. But I think he goes to C6. Sorry, F6 even. Yeah, now I have the opposition. Oh, wait, no, it doesn't really matter, though, does it? It doesn't really matter. Because if king e6, king e4, king f6, I can't come to f4. So I have to come back to e3, where he can't get the opposition. He comes here, I come here. He retreats, I follow. He comes here. Yeah, that's just a draw. You have to be very careful in these positions. Whoa, what? Yeah, no, actually, no, it doesn't matter, does it? Although, here. Hold on, am I a step ahead there? Although, if I come to c4, he comes to c6. Here. Yeah, okay. So I should take the opposition. If he comes here, and I come here, then he should win that race. So I should follow him. If he steps this way, then I run and win the g6 pawn, I promote and I win, but he's not going to do that. Yeah, so now I just need to not go here, because then I lose. I need to come back to e3, where he can't get the opposition. He could take the distant opposition with king e7. King d4, king d6 is actually kind of annoying. Although after here and back, it doesn't actually matter. Yeah, this is kind of technical, but it's just a draw. It's just a draw. Basically, I just need to not step onto f3 and allow him to f5, but we both know that, and that's going to be a draw by repetition. My opponent, I mean, hats off, defended so well to hold on to that game. I feel like I should have had a way to win, but I could not see any. But let's jump into the analysis and see what the computer has to say. Okay, so 90.7% accuracy for me, 90.1 for my opponent. So yeah, the opening, this is pretty standard. Knight f6, knight f3, knight c6. Knight a3 is actually not that good. Bishop e3 or dc5 is better. I think I was slightly concerned about knight g4, but the engine doesn't care. If knight bd2 takes and takes, it actually thinks we're doing really well. Oh, I guess we're getting a massive center, aren't we? With like e4 maybe. Or bishop c. Yeah, I suppose. So a6, sorry, knight to a3. a6 is a mistake, but knight c4 is the way to punish it. So I know we're threatening to come here, but I didn't think it was all that impressive because I thought that cd4 and after knight to b6, queen e4, and something like bishop to e2, rook b8, I couldn't see any way for us to actually punish black. The way to do it is apparently queen e2. I mean, you don't even have to accept the queen trade. You could just go rook b8. And after takes and takes, oh, bishop f4 is the idea. Here there is knight d6 still, cd4, and I guess we just have a lot of pressure. It's very hard to get rid of this knight. d5 could be on the way. Makes sense in retrospect, like rook c1, pressure on the bishop, that kind of thing. So bishop e3 is a miss. cd4 is best, bishop c4 is best, queen h5 is inaccurate, better is queen a5. And after knight d4, queen d4, there's pawn e5 supported by the queen b6, bishop b6, and apparently black is better after bishop f5, cutting off knight c2 and threatening bishop a3. Okay, that makes sense. My opponent goes queen h5, knight d4 is best, knight d4, queen h5 is the best option. So I was considering queen d4, but this is actually slightly worse for us after e5, tempo on the queen and hitting the knight. So queen h5 is the way to go. Knight h5, bishop d4, and we are slightly better. e6 is the best move. Knight c2 is best. Bishop d6 is a bit inaccurate because of queenside castle with pressure. So bishop f4, engine was knight e3. Why? Let's say knight f6, g3. Okay, if takes, I can understand why we're better, because we have the bishop pair. But what if the bishop just retreats? Rook. Oh, no, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah, that's the correct size. If rook he1, castles, bishop f1. This is the only way to gain a big advantage. Looking for this, I guess. b6... Knight c4. I'm not going to lie, I don't really see why we're +1 as opposed to what we did, but okay, king b1. Castles is a mistake because of g3, which we play. Best was knight f6 or bishop d7 immediately. Okay. So castles g3, bishop c7. f4 is good. Bishop e2 is best, looking for this. The engine here wants to go e5 and sack a pawn, which looks ridiculous, because we're just better. I guess the point is this pawn could be weak, but okay. Knight d5, c4 is best, knight e7, bishop f3 is best. We're playing pretty perfectly here. Knight c6. Engine does want bishop c5 now. If rook e8 wants to go for a bishop trade. And then if take, we can double up. Okay. Sure. And then there's no bishop d7 ever. And if rook d8... Rook d8, bishop d8, rook d1, if bishop to... Let's say let's say f6. Let's say f6. b3, there's no bishop d7. Is this just a better version of what we had in the game? I don't know. So bishop c3, rook d8, take, rook d1, bishop e7. Knight d4 is best. This is the best continuation. Okay, so I was correct with knight d4. f6, bishop e6 is best. Okay, king c2 is a bit slow. The immediate c5 is better. Okay, but we were low on time. King e8, c5 is best. Rook b8, c6. Okay, bishop c7 first. c6 is best. Bishop a5 is best. This is completely winning. But c7 is a bit off. The best move here is g4, playing against bishop f5. And if a move like bishop to e6, then f5. And if the bishop goes to, say, c4, then c7. Oh, and then if the rook blocks, we have this. Ah, okay. So we have to stop e4, basically. Which is why also a good move is bishop e4, stopping bishop f5, e4. Right, okay then. So pawn c7, bishop f5, king c1, pawn e4. Bishop g2, I'm still much better. Bishop g6. Oh, here I have bishop h3? Wait. Yeah, but there's f5. What's the point? Rook d5, same as in the game, rook c8. And then I just do nothing. I just move my king. This bishop can't move because f5 hangs. If something like bishop f6, I can just do nothing, and the bishop is useless. The king can't do a whole lot, because my rook is cutting the king off. If king e7, the engine just wants to take. Oh, I win the rook, because the king can't defend the rook. Ah. Right, okay. So g4, f5. Here, better was the immediate rook d5. And if takes f5, I didn't even consider that. Here, rook d4. To be fair, I can still take, and after take, rook c8, bishop c6, the king is forced away, and then I win the rook. Okay, so gf5 is inaccurate. Bishop f5, rook d5 is best. g6, rook e5. So basically, I can't allow the king over. That was my mistake. I should have just brought my king into the game. Okay, let's say rook c8, king e3. Let's say the rook keeps shuffling. Now bishop e4, king e4. And black can't cross the d file. The rook can't ever take. And what's my actual threat? To be fair, I guess I could just go rook a6 if I really want. You can't take because of promotion. Rook c8, rook b6 threatening this. King d7, rook b5, bishop b6, rook b8. Take. And I'm up 2 pawns, which is completely winning. So, okay, I just didn't understand the position. Here, there is only one move to win with white, and this is where I messed up. 40 seconds left, understandable, but can you find the move that wins here for white? Can you find it? It's rook d5. Rook d5. And if the king goes back to e8, then again, the plan is for this and this, like we just saw. If the king comes to e6, then rook d8, and I win a piece. Because after takes, and takes, I'm up a piece. And I guess if king here, the same thing, rook d8. So bishop e4 is the move that basically draws me the game. After bishop d6, rook d4, rook c8, bishop b4, I missed rook c7, but I don't have anything. There's nothing I can do here to hold on to the pawn. Let's say I bring the king up. The king comes to c6, and I can't keep hold of the pawn. h4, take, and it's basically just a draw. So I try to win by getting all the pieces off the board, trying to do it on my terms. But yeah, my opponent plays very well. And here, I was trying to see if king c4 worked. I figured I was losing, and I am correct. The problem is that I'm too slow, because there's g5. Now, if the king has to wander over and take, then I win. But g5 is the problem. I have to take this, really. King takes, and after a4, h4, a5, h3, the black pawn is just quicker and covers a8, so I can't even promote to a queen at all, which is why I have to keep the opposition with a black king. And here, like, king e6 is the only move, otherwise I win. Let's say the king comes to c6, I come here, I win. So the king has to go to e6. King e3 here is the only move. The reason is I need to be able to come to f3, but if I do it immediately, king f5 wins the game for black, because if I go to e3, the king infiltrates. If I come to g3, the king infiltrates, and he will win the f4 pawn. So I have to set up a situation where if the black king comes to f5, then I go to f3. So if king f5, king f3, the black king has no forward movement, so he has to go back, and then I can follow him. So king d5, again, I have to keep the opposition with king d3, because if I do anything else, like let's say king f3, I get shouldered out, he comes over here and I lose. So king d3, king d6, king d4, king e6. Again, I have to consider, does king c5 work? But no, I am not quite quick enough. So king e6, king e4, king f6, and again, king e3 is the only way to play, because I have to make sure that the moment king f5 is played, I have king f3 keeping him out. So we just have a repetition. Really, really interesting game. The way to win, because my opponent defended so well, I think the way to win was rather difficult to actually find with low time. I could have used my time better. Moves like knight d4, I maybe could have played a bit faster. But yeah, really interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed. And if you want to see the previous episode of the speedrun in the Alapin, check out the video up there. Really interesting one. And if you want to see all of the previous episodes of the Climb to 2300, check out the playlist down there. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in one of those videos.